Amazon Web Services has added over 1,000 services and features just last year. In this topic, I'm going to go over their core services you will most likely use when you start using AWS. Now we're going to go over the core services in the AWS area. And when I mean core services, these are usually services that you're going to use a lot, and it's kind of the backbone of AWS. So let's start off with the compute section. And here you see that there's 6 sections here. This changes as well. Matter of fact, batch was just added a week ago, and some of these have moved around. Lightsail was added as well. Lambda was added to compute. These were not here as of maybe 6 months ago. So let's just go ahead and go through these services now, and we'll start with EC2. Now EC2, once again, this is the backbone. This is their virtual machines, their virtual servers. You can put Linux or Windows on there, and then once you've done that, you can configure them just like you would any other server, whether it be on premises or anywhere else. It's a regular one. You can do anything you want with it. The nice thing is nowadays is that you can set these up so quickly that, instead of ordering a server and getting that to your on-premise in a month or two, this can be done within minutes. And so now a lot of companies are setting up these virtual machines in minutes, doing their work and shutting them down in minutes and days now instead of in months and years to do. EC2 is basically your container service, which uses Docker, and this is where you can run application services and batch processes. Lightsail they added a year ago, 2016, and this was basically done for people who didn't really want to have an AWS account, but they wanted to actually compete with some of these other hosting companies that were doing like a full service hosting company. So here you can actually set up a website that's being done through the AWS backend, but it's going through the Lightsail portal, if you want to call it that. And for example, you can set up a WordPress site, a Magento site, Node.js. Very simple to do. You just go in there to Lightsail, say what you want to set up, if it's WordPress or Magento, and then it sets it up very easily. But it's actually using the AWS services. Elastic Beanstalk is another service it's kind of a full service by Amazon, where they actually will help deploy and monitor the application that you want to do. And for example, you can do PHP, Ruby, Python, or Node.js. And also what Beanstalk does is it'll help update these as well. So you can, if you have any PHP, it'll keep it to the most up-to-date version as well. So very easy to do. You're also very limited on what you can do, but it's very easy to set up. And if you're new to Amazon, this is a great way to get started. Lambda is something that just came out not too long ago, and this is kind of going into serverless now. If you've heard of serverless, and this is what Amazon uses to do that, which is their Lambda. It's used to run your code in response to events. And basically what it does is it automatically run your code without requiring you to provision any of the servers. And for example, if you want, let's just say, you can actually run a website, and if you have the website set up with, let's just say, Node.js, and you can have your pages stored in Amazon S3, and then when somebody requests a web page, it'll go to Lambda. Lambda will then go grab the web page from S3 and then bring it so you can view it. And by doing this, you're no longer using any type of server to host the website. So that's where they come to serverless. And there's all sorts of applications you can use with serverless, and it's becoming really very popular right now, and I think it'll become even more popular moving in the future. Batch, like I said, they just added this probably within a few weeks. I think they announced it towards their reInvent last year in 2016. But basically what you can do now is you can just run batches of computing workloads of any scale on EC2. You can do it as a demand or on Spot, which we'll talk about Spot instances when we get into the EC2 section. And there's no need to install or manage any of this. Basically, you just bring your batch up, upload it, and then run it, and you're good to go. And Amazon takes care of all of the EC2 servers and everything. So it's very, very easy to use. So now let's go to the Amazon AWS console and take a look at these services. Okay, so here we are on the AWS console, and we'll review the compute section here. So now we'll start off with the EC2, which once again is their virtual machines. And here you can see once again that we are in the Ohio region here, so any type of EC2 that we set up would be in the Ohio region. And we'll just go here. This just shows you if you have any running, any dedicated hosts that you have, volumes. Volumes are storage, elastic IPs that are assigned to any of the EC2s in this area. Snapshots are when you actually take a copy of your virtual instance. So let's just say you set it up and you put Linux on there and you put certain applications and code. You can take a snapshot of that and you have that here. So you can take it and let's just say you delete that, or something happens with that EC2 instance, you can delete it, terminate it, and then open it back up with a snapshot of that. And then you have your load balancers, which we'll discuss later, and their security groups. And so here you have the service status. You can see where things are going on in the Ohio region. Here they have 3 availability zones, so you can see what's going on here. And if we go here, we won't really get into the details of launching an instance, but you can at least see I can pick Linux, I can pick any type of Linux ones if that's what I want to do. You can actually scroll down and you can pick Windows and so on. So very, very easy to pick. You have a marketplace here, which is if you want to pick, let's just say, something that's already a certain type of platform or a certain type of business that does a third party. Let's just say if you have something that connects with Windows, you can actually add it, find it here. So you can do any kind of search here. Let's just say real quick, we'll just put in WordPress. Let's just see what's going on with WordPress. Here you've got WordPress, different types of WordPress companies that have already made. And since WordPress is open source, more than likely these are free, but not all. A lot of these aren't going to be free. If you deal with Microsoft, of course, you can see that you can get the Microsoft ones now, but of course you're going to have a license. And then you can also create your own AMIs, and you can put them here as well. So once you create something that you want, let's just say we go here, we do a Linux, and once again, here's your free tier. This is part of your free tier for the 12 months. So you can add that here. It tells you how many virtual CPUs you have, memory, your storage. You can do EBS, which is the storage that can be attached to it. And if it's optimized, which means it'll run faster. And then this just tells you, what kind of performance you're going to get with this. And now they've added IPv6 support, which they didn't have before, but now they do have that. So if you go here and you can launch this, you will see that once you get done launching everything, you can actually create an AMI for whatever you have here. So this just kind of goes into more detail. You can launch it here. You have to, of course, get the security pairs and add all that. Once you do that, then you'll have an EC2 that'll be up and running pretty quickly. Now we'll go into the container service. Basically, this is container. If you work with containers, then you'll understand all this. And using Docker is the main source of how you do all this. And it's very easy to get started, just like you did with the EC2s. And of course, once you have Docker set up, you'll be able to get this done pretty quickly as well. Lightsail, that's what we talked about. This is actually an external site, so it takes you somewhere else. And you can see here that this is what I talked about. You can start up a WordPress site pretty quickly. If you want to just do OS only, then once again you can do Linux. And then here's your cost. So pretty low cost. It's can be about the same price, maybe a little bit more than other places that do the same thing, but at least you get an idea of how it works and how you can launch it. Very simple to launch and to get started. The Elastic Beanstalk, once again, this is something that you can start up yourself. If you're getting started with AWS, this is a good place to start. We can just go through a real quick step here. Here's your platform. You can choose. Here's like a Node.js, PHP. You can select that. You can actually put an application that they have, a sample application, or you can upload your own. So let's just say if you have a PHP that you want to set, you can do it right here. Or if you have Python code, you can actually set it up right here, or you can just pick something that they have already. So this is a good way to get started. You would hit the sample application, create the application, and then it'll go ahead and create it. You can see how quickly that goes, and then you'll have it set up and ready to go. Okay, now moving on, we have Lambda. Lambda, once again, is the serverless. Basically, it's a trigger. So their biggest thing is it's serverless, so no servers to manage. And then basically it's an event triggered. So when somebody, like I said, wants a website, it calls for that web page that goes to Lambda, and then Lambda goes to the S3 and grabs that information. And if you're familiar with Alexa, with Amazon's Alexa, basically that's all run by Lambda. So you ask Lambda a question, that goes to Lambda, and then Lambda will go and get the information that you need. So Lambda is very powerful. It's, serverless is becoming more and more popular, and it's definitely something that is going to be very popular in the future. Okay, so now what we did is you can see here that we're going to batch, and you can see that batch is not supported in Ohio. And a lot of the new services that they roll out are not supported in certain regions. Virginia is the core region for Amazon, and so most things that they do roll out are going to be in the Virginia region. And you can see here's how. So once we change my region to Virginia, then you can go and start up a batch. And once again, when you start up a batch, and if you go back into Ohio, you're going to wonder what happened or why it's not there, and that's why. It's because you're up here. So, and this is very, very easy and simple. Once again, you upload your batch, run it, and Amazon will take care of everything else for you. So that wraps up the compute section for AWS. Now we're going to talk about the database storage in AWS. And we have 4 right now at the moment, and they are RDS, DynamoDB, Elasticache, and Redshift. And let's discuss each one of them. So RDS is called Relational Database Storage, and you're probably familiar with this, if you use any type of database. And basically what it comes down to, it's MySQL, Oracle, Amazon Aurora, which is really an offshoot of MySQL, which we'll get into more detail as well. But basically, it's Amazon's version of MySQL. They have a lot more features, upgrades, and of course, it costs more to use. And then you got PostSQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and then MariaDB. And then we have DynamoDB, and DynamoDB is a NoSQL database, which means non-relational. Once again, if you're familiar with databases, you're familiar with this. And it's very similar to MongoDB. It's very fast, very scalable. A lot of uses that we use it for is we have a core database, and then we have a DynamoDB that will actually be used to increase the queries. So basically we'll look for something, once it finds something. For example, you can use DynamoDB to access S3 storage, and you use DynamoDB to find the file based on whatever parameters you put in there, and then Dynamo will tell you where it's at and give you the link to the location in S3. Redshift, of course, is your big data, which is really big right now. It's the warehouse storage. You can run queries on this database as well, but it's Amazon's version of the big data warehouse. Elasticache, if you're familiar with any kind of caching, this is basically cache for database, and Amazon uses Redis and Memcache. Okay, so now let's look at the database services in AWS. So now we're in the AWS console, and we'll take a look at their databases here, and we'll start with the RDS. Now before I go into RDS, this is basically taking your database and setting it up on its own, and there's a lot of benefits to doing that, but there's also a cost. And having an RDS database is going to cost more versus adding a MySQL database directly onto let's just say an EC2. So if your database is not that big, then I would recommend maybe using an EC2 instance to host your database, to have it all in one, than to set up an RDS. So just keep that in mind. But you can see this is very, very simple to get started. You can pick, here's your Amazon Aurora. Of course, they pushed this first because this is what they want, but you can see the benefits here. If they back it up 5 different places, it works out very well. MySQL, you have here they got the Amazon Aurora as well in this place, because you can set it up as a development, and it's free. And there's your other ones as well. So if we go here to Amazon, we can hit select, and you can see here you can pick your size, your class, depending on what your need is. But you can see that they're pretty large. You can get as big as you want. You can pick, and if you want replication, of course, if you're looking for the free version, you want to hit no. If you hit create in a different zone, then you'll be charged for that. And then this is where you set up your database and all your different passwords. So that's basically how it works. And you can kind of see here the costs that, based on what you pick as well, how it changes. So you can go from $29 a month, all the way up to, $6,000. So it gives you an idea, especially with the read replica. If we take that off and hit no, then you can see they don't have the charge there as well. So that's the RDS section. If we go to DynamoDB, here once again, I just want to take a look at the different regions here. DynamoDB is pretty much available in all regions here, but to get started here, you create your table, and you can put your partition key in, and so on, and that's how you get started there. So we won't go into detail there, but that's basically how you get started with DynamoDB. In the Elasticache, of course, you're going to have a database set up, so you can get this set up with Elasticache, but once again, it's very, very simple. If most of the time you're going to use Memcache to do any type of caching, if you're familiar with the two, Redis, of course, is going to be more of a faster, but it's more specialized, more unique kind of data, and Memcache is probably going to be more for your basic. So you can see if I start the two here. And then here we have the Redshift data warehouse. And once again, if you're familiar with any kind of database or big data warehouses, it works in clusters. You can see your clusters are right here. Once again, you can take snapshots as well, backups. There's actually automated backups built into Redshift. At least gives you an idea of how it all works. And then it's very easy to launch to get started as well. And you can set up your parameters and so on and get started from there. So that covers the database section in AWS. Now we're going to go over AWS storage, which is their most popular, most used service. And right now they have 4 services underneath storage, which of course could change very easily. This has changed probably in the past 6 months, but what we have right now is their S3, which is their common storage, and then EFS, which is their electronic file system, Glacier, and then Storage Gateway. So instead of going into extreme details by slide, let's just go ahead and dive into AWS and take a look there. So now we're on the Amazon S3 bucket area, and you can see here that I have Elastic Beanstalk buckets, and this was created when I created that Beanstalk from the previous version. So you can see that it actually automatically created an S3. So you can see how great that is because you didn't have to go in here and create it yourself. It did it for you, and so which makes Beanstalk a great feature and a great option for you if you don't want to mess around with doing everything yourself. So this is basically where you create buckets, and once you create it, then let's just say with this bucket here, it'll give you all sorts of different ways of properties and tells you everything about that service. So this is where you can create buckets, and you can actually put them in different areas. You can add different names to them. So you can put tags. This is something they added, so now you can put tags to it now. So you can put your different files. It's almost like creating a folder with it, but you're tagging it instead. So there's quite a bit you can do with S3. And now we have the Elastic file system, which is pretty much a fairly new system. And this is a great way to control your files. If you have any kind of filing system, a file server, then this is what you'd want to use to do that with an EC2 instance. And this is very easy to do. It's becoming very popular. There's actually quite a bit you can do with this. Automate this as well. Now Glacier is basically, if you want to look at Glacier as cold storage, that's probably, I guess, a good name for Glacier. So it's cold storage. So this is something that's going to be long-term. You can actually set it up where if you put documents in S3, you can have a document sit in S3 for 30 days. And there's different levels of S3 as well. There's frequently accessed and then not frequently accessed, and then you've got Glacier. And you can actually set a document that goes into S3 to go through different, like maybe after 30 days it goes here to the next level down, and then actually send it to Glacier. And you can actually send it directly to Glacier after a certain amount of time. So let's just say you have documents and they've sat in there for a year in S3, then now you want to move them down to Glacier because you don't want to pay the cost of S3 because Glacier is much cheaper. Now, Glacier is much cheaper to store your documents, but of course more expensive to access your documents. So of course you don't want to access them very often, and that's why they're sitting in Glacier. And of course there's all sorts of security built into Glacier. There's redundancy, backup as well. So it's a very great tool to use. You can use their API and have documents sent directly from your on-premise location directly to Glacier. And of course you can do the same thing with S3. Now, Storage Gateway is a great way to store documents. This is also could be very, very important with if you want to migrate your data to the cloud as well. But basically what AWS Storage is, it's a way to connect your on-premise storage to Amazon's S3. So basically you would connect it through a VPN or direct connect, which is I guess an internet connection from your premises on-premise to AWS, and it's just direct private connection. But you can hook this up, and basically you can actually send all your data back and have it backed up to AWS. You can also have it use a cache system on your on-premise, so that way your data is stored, all your data is stored in AWS, and then just the data that you use the most will be cached on your on-premise. So there's two different ways to do that. And of course with the migration, if you want to migrate to the cloud, you can set up a storage gateway and then send all your data to AWS and the S3, and that's there for you. And then of course once it's there, then you can set up your EC2s and so on and set up your premises there, or you can have some sort of hybrid. And that covers all the features there for storage. So now we're going to discuss Amazon's networking content delivery. And basically right now they have 4 services, which is the Virtual Private Cloud, VPC, Direct Connect, which is a direct connection from your on-premise to Amazon, and the CloudFront, which we've talked about before, which is their edge location, that's the CDN, and of course Route 53, which is like their DNS management system. So now we'll go to the AWS console and take a look at these services. So now we're on the AWS console, and we're going to go over the network and content delivery of the 4 different services they have. And we'll start off with VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. Now, by default, one Virtual Private Cloud is already set up, and so we'll go in here and take a look at this. And you can see here that they've got it here. You can look at your subnets, and subnets are started by the amount of availability zones they have. And you can remember in Virginia has 5 availability zones, and so that's why you have 5 different subnets. And you can see here their CIDR blocks are all set up already, and of course you can do all that yourself. You can go into a VPC, create your own VPC, and then you can set up the CIDR blocks and so on from there. So that's a VPC, a general overlook of a VPC. And now at the CloudFront, which we've already discussed, is basically their CDN, and that's basically just setting it up and deciding what you want to do from there. And of course you have 2 options. You can start up a web, and if you want to do an RTMP distribution, for streaming any type of media files, you can do that here as well. And then going to Direct Connect, as I mentioned, Direct Connect is basically a connection from your on-premise, your facility, directly to the AWS. And it's not using a VPN at all. It's actually a connection through your internet provider in your local city, and then you actually connect to the network to AWS. And this goes into more detail. It will definitely take a few days, some time, I guess, depending on when your location, to set this up. So if you're in a hurry to get data to Amazon or vice versa, you need to take into account that Direct Connect takes some time to set up. And then going to Route 53. And Route 53, you really can do a lot in Route 53. You can set up you can actually create your own domain as DNS management. You can route your traffic depending on where they're coming from. So you can either go by latency or their location. Let's just say if you have a German website, you can direct all German IP addresses to the German website. You can block certain people if certain, let's just say you have a web application EC2 instances in Frankfurt, and you also have them let's just say in Ohio, then you can set that up and it will manage that. Now, if let's just say the U.S. goes down, then it'll direct traffic to Germany. Of course, it's going to be a little bit higher latency for the people in the United States, but at least it'll take care of that as well. And of course, you get your domain registration. So Route 53 is big. Route 53 is based on the port for internet traffic. That's where the 53 came up, and so that's where they came from. Same with Route 66. Okay, so that covers all the services in network and content delivery. Now we're going to discuss migration using AWS, and there's 4 services right now that they have for this, and that is the Application Discovery Service, Server Migration, DMS, and Snowball. So now let's take a look at each service. So Application Discovery Service, this basically just discovers what you have on your on-premise when it comes to virtual machines and the configuration. And this basically tells you, the idea behind this is to see what kind of configuration you have in your on-site premises and what will it take to set up on AWS. And one of the things that I think that we always get kickbacks and people are always concerned about is by letting someone into their on-premise and look at their configuration and worry about the data. But with this system, AWS only looks at just the configuration and not the data. And then the migration service with their databases, basically just what it does is it migrates data. There's no need to, you don't even have to have the original database. So if you want to move Oracle to a different type of database, you can actually do that. So you don't have to go from platform to platform. You can change that. And you can use this, again, for your migration purposes by migrating from, let's say, moving a MySQL database to AWS. This can be used for that. And here's a list of all the different SQL, MySQL, Mongo, and so on that you can migrate to there. So it's a great way to move your database from on-site to AWS. It also helps with moving from one region to the other. Server migration is very simple. That's just basically if you have any kind of VMware on your on-site premises, you can actually take that and move it to AWS as well. And then there's Snowball. And Snowball is a great import-export of large data, and this is basically what it looks like right here. You actually connect it to your database center, and then you can transfer all the data to there. It's encrypted as you move it there. So basically what you'll do is you'll download software, Snowball software to your on-premise database, and then actually it'll take that and encrypt it and then store it here on this, and then you just mail it directly to Amazon. And of course, Amazon will mail it to you, you mail it to them, they take the data, and of course they'll delete the data, and you do not get this device back. So it's a great way to move large data. If you don't have direct connect, or if you're on a VPN or something, you can use this to send data to them. And of course it takes roughly about a week depending on your location to do it. So now let's go into the AWS console and take a look at these features. So now we're on the AWS console, and let's take a look at the migration services. So now we'll go into the first one, the Application Discovery Service, which is not supported in North Virginia. And you can see here that's not actually supported at any location other than Oregon. So I show you this drop down here. You can see that the only one that's highlighted is Oregon. And of course, the reason for this is it doesn't need to be in any region other than one location, because it's basically checking the on-premises, and it doesn't matter about your location because it's just going to be something that you connect to your service and searches for. So basically just start here to get started, and then I'll connect software to your on-site premises, and it goes from there. Now we'll move on to the DMS. And once again, this is very simple to do. It's a great way, an easy way to move your databases, especially even if you want to start a backup, you can back them up there. You can use them from one region to the other. But it's a great way an easy way to migrate your database to AWS, and actually from AWS back down to your on-premise as well. And then moving on to the server migration. Once again, this is just a simple way to, if any type of virtual servers you have on your on-premise, you can easily move that same configuration to AWS as well. And just by clicking on the Get Started, easy to do. And then Snowball, it's basically just setting that up and then ordering it, and then create the job, and put in what your location. They'll send you the information. You'll download the software, and then once you get the device, you download the data. It's encrypted, and it's sent it to Amazon, and they'll take it off from here and put it on the location that you set up. So once again, easy to do as well. And then, as I mentioned in the other part, the storage gateway is also a great way to migrate your data. The one-time storage gateway was under migration, or somewhere around there, but it's changed again because it is storage, but it's also a great way to migrate your data. Okay, so that covers the services under migration. So now we're going to go over the management tool services in AWS, and as you can see, there's quite a few of them. They seem to add quite a bit to each one of these services, and maybe even add a new service at least once a year. Right now they have 8 services under management tools. Let's take a look at each one of them. So CloudWatch is a very powerful tool, and basically what it does is it monitors your resources. So it monitors your CPU usage and so on. And there's a free version that comes with when you set up, let's just say, an EC2, it'll automatically monitor that. And then of course you can go into more detailed by the minute monitoring if you want. There's a lot of third-party application services out there that will pull the API from CloudWatch and give you more of a visual display of what's going on with all your services. But CloudWatch is a very popular way to monitor your system, and there's a lot of resources out there that use CloudWatch as well. Now, CloudFormation is a very big, if you're a developer and you use Amazon a lot for a lot of big, a lot of EC2s, databases, a lot of configurations. CloudFormation is great for that. It's basically a way of turning your infrastructure into code. It creates templates, and you can expand your infrastructure based on CloudFormation. So for example, if you go into and you set up 5 EC2s for a web application, and then you have maybe some more backend and a private subnet for other applications, and then let's just say you have a MySQL and another subnet, and you have them connected, you have certain code with each one, you have Bootstrap and so on. You can take that and turn that into a template with AWS. And then instead of going through and setting it up all over again, you can take this CloudFormation, let's say you want to set up now, say you have it on the West Coast, and now you want to move it to Europe. You can take that template, go into the Europe section, and then enable CloudFormation. So it's a great way to make things much easier for you. And there's also templates out there that are available on the internet through GitHub and so on that you can use to create a template of things that are already done, so you don't have to go through all the work yourself. So it's definitely something to look into if you do a lot of developing on AWS. Now, CloudTrail is very simple. It's an auditing tool. It's for what it does. It's just basically a logging tool, and that's about it. But the nice thing about that is that it logs, and there's a lot of services out there that'll actually use that you can read this logging information to make sure that everything's running correctly or not. So it can be imported into CloudWatch. It can be imported into other software to let you know exactly what's going on. So when people log in, if someone with an API has a call to an AWS resource, this is all logged by CloudTrail. And of course, you can adjust what you want logged and what you don't through CloudTrail. Config basically monitors the environment. I like to say it monitors it's like the playground monitor. It watches everything that's going on within your environment. You can set alerts if something happens. It watches users. So whereas CloudTrail is just logging stuff, config is actually watching if something goes wrong. Let's just say if a user goes somewhere it's not supposed to. Of course, if you have the right settings at the very beginning when you set that user up, that person should only be able to look at certain services. But just in case, if you're not, it watches that and actually give someone an alert. So that's basically what config does. opsWorks, once again, that's kind of like CloudFormation, but it's something that you can actually do more work into, and you have more features, more options available to you. You can create stacks with Chef, and you have Chef Automate. So if you're using Chef at all, opsWorks is the way to go for you as a developer. Service catalog, this is basically a way to, if you're a big corporation and you have AMIs, which we talked about in EC2, that's basically your setup for an EC2 instance. Let's just say you have certain ones that you have and you don't want any other ones used. You can do that. You can really pretty much tell people within the company, the users, what they're authorized to use and not use. And then there's Trusted Advisor, which is basically a way you can go into, which we'll go here in a minute, but it's a way just to see what's going on in the environment that you have or what you've set up. It gives you recommendations on optimization, security fixes, and fault tolerance, and so on. This used to be a feature that an actual AWS architect would actually contact you and would look at your system and all your resources and your security setup and tell you, here's what you need to do. And basically what they did is they just kept track of all the things that they would tell people and tried to see what they could do to automate that, and that's how they came up with Trusted Advisor. And managed services is basically what it sounds like. It's basically if you want somebody to actually manage these services for you. It's ongoing management of what you have set up in AWS. They can take care of change requests, they can take care of monitoring, patch management, and basically what it's going to do is it's going to connect you with a partner of AWS and help you with whatever you need help with so you can focus on developing or something else. So now let's go into the AWS console and take a look at these services. So now we're on the AWS console. We're going to take a look at the management tools, the services under there, and let's just start off with CloudWatch. So I said CloudWatch will monitor the resources that are being used, and we really don't have any that are set up at this time, but it's a good way of going there and you have your metrics. And if we had stuff running, you could be able to look and see what's going on. You can set alerts. You can set alerts that can email you. So if a CPU does something wrong, it can email you and tell you, that you set certain parameters. So if it hits 90% CPU usage, you can have it email you. It also has other ones as well. So there's a lot of stuff you can do here. It's a very powerful tool as well, and you can actually get several different scripts for the CloudWatch, and you can actually get other people to actually monitor your CloudWatch for you. So a lot of features there with CloudWatch. Now, CloudFormation, once again, this is something that you can create yourself, or you can create with, you can do yourself. If you can get templates, you can get templates. You can buy templates. Let's just say if once again, let's go back to WordPress. If you want to buy a WordPress site that is in 2 different availability zones for redundancy, and you want a CDN network connected to it, you can find that. When you find it, you can upload it here. You can create a new stack. You can do your own template. You can create your templates from in here. So now you have all these different versions here of here's your WordPress blog. You have Windows Active Directory. You can set that up as well. Or once again, you can come up with your own different template as well. So a lot you can do with CloudFormation, very powerful, and there's going to be more and more features added to CloudFormation as Amazon moves forward with that. Okay, so now we'll move on to CloudTrail. Once again, CloudTrail is just simply a logging service. It logs all the AWS API calls. You can use this to store this data somewhere. You can have an auditing company look at that. If there's something that's going on, you can run it through a service and try to find out what's going on. And then you can also get notified now through CloudTrail if there's something that goes outside of a certain parameter. So it's a great service, something that you should always turn on and look at and make sure that everything's running correctly. So it's a good way to find out what's going on, debugging, and it's actually mandatory for a lot of compliance where you have to keep track of everything that's going on. Once again, config pretty much tells you everything that's going on there. Of course, you can set the rules of what you want to know, and then once you set up and let you know the rules, then I'll continue. Usually check for that and let you know if anything goes outside of those rules. Once again, this is probably good for compliance, or if you have a lot of different people using it that are in your AWS account, developers, freelancers, so on. This is a good system to have in place as well. opsWorks, once again, if you use Chef, this is a great system to use, great to work with. You can work with your stacks, or you can use Chef Automate. easy to get set up. Your service catalog, once again, this is just if you have a company that you want to have control of everything. You can create, manage, and everything in there, and then only the users can use what they have access for. You can even set certain access to certain people. So this is a great system if you have a big company and a lot of people to use that use the AWS. The Trusted Advisor, once again, the Trusted Advisor, like I said, this was done by an architect that would actually call you up, and now they've pretty much automated this. And you can kind of see here just from ours, it's checking, right now it's checking everything in AWS in our account to see. I'm sure we'll probably get some errors from IAM. Let's just see here. All the different ones. So it looks like it checks out. We can click on each one of these to break it down and see. We have the root set up here, so it should be good, but we have some other ones here, so we need to go in here, finish using our IAM, but at least it gives you an idea. MFA on the root account, which we have, so it's checked. It looks good. We did that at the very beginning, so everything looks good. And then, of course, if you had more, let's just say you had an EC2 that was running, but it wasn't being used or was underutilized, you would see that right here. If your performance in either direction, let's just say your EC2s are always at 90-some%, it'll put something here. And of course, your security, if you have any kind of security issues. If we didn't have the multi-factor authentication, this would show here for sure. Any kind of fault tolerance, if you had stuff set up and you didn't have a backup or something like that, especially if it was big, it would check there as well. And then once again, your managed services, there's really not much here other than, if you're ready, if you want someone to help manage your services, then you can go here, contact them, and then they'll take a look at what you're doing and then go from there. So a simple service to use as well. Okay, so that should reviews all of our management tools, all the services under management tools. These core services are the backbone to AWS. Getting a good overview of these services will give you a good idea how they can help you get your business using the cloud.